Hello there. So what have we got in store for you this week over the next hour or so? We've got a former Yorkshire cricketer who's gone on to become one of the world's top test match umpires, if not the top test match umpire, allowing of course that we're slightly biased. And we've got one of the region's favourite footballers, certainly favourite footballers at Sheffield United. He was there a long time. He's now gone on to another football club locally, just down the road at Chesterfield. He is Chris Morgan, first team coach now at Chesterfield. Good evening, Chris. Your second visit to these studios, so we must be doing something right. I must have given you too easy a time on the previous one. Was it? It was about your testimonial, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It was July time. Yeah,
it was
the build up to the testimonial. So, yeah, you looked after me first time, so I thought we'd pop back in again.
We'll see what we can do this time. I noticed you were wearing shin pads this time, so, so am I. Richard Kettleborough, great to see you. It's your first visit to us. You're sporting a tan, an all year round suntan, aren't you, as a cricket umpire who follows the sun?
Absolutely. Not being able to do your home country does have its own bonuses now and again, and obviously following the sun, just come back from Australia for about a week and before I leave for New Zealand again. Right.
Are you a cricket fan, Morgs?
I played a little bit at school, a couple of charity games now and then, but
right.
no, I suppose I was always one track. It was always football. You know,
but you follow it, you watch it with interest.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think you have to do it as a Yorkshireman.
Yeah, absolutely, and they are doing great, aren't they? Yorkshire at the moment. You won't see any of this because you're over somewhere else in the world, but you did play for Yorkshire, so.
Yeah, Yorkshire, I think a real success story at the moment in the fact that a lot of lads have come through the league systems, come through the academy and got on to play for the first team, and obviously back-to-back titles speaks for itself. They've very well led by Jason Gillespie and Martin Moxon, Andrew Gale as captain, Alex Lee's now captain of the one-day side, and look, they've got some experience there with Tim Bresnan, Ryan Sidebottom, and a lot of really, really good young players who are coming to the fore.
Indeed. You made a point just now about not being here during our summer, and that was never the case, was it, until a few years ago. The likes of Dickie Bird and all your predecessors, they would be there umpiring England, and that changed. I don't know whether you agree with that or whether you think that's slightly sad, that they almost as if they couldn't be trusted to be neutral and impartial when they were umpiring their own countries, when in fact I thought they bent over backwards to make sure they were.
Yeah, I think, look, if you're looking over in history, that probably the English and the Australian umpires have got the best reputations of being really good. We've got very good systems where we come through those systems, but I think if we're being honest, the neutrality is a good thing. It's disappointing from my point of view that I'll never be able to umpire a test match at Lord's or at my home ground at Headingley, but you know, I get to umpire at the MCG on Boxing Day in front of 80,000 people in Sydney and places like Calcutta and that, so it's different, but and in a way slightly disappointing, but that's the way it is and it's not going to change.
How can it be slightly disappointing to be in Australia when the sun's shining, and all these places when the West Indies, Caribbean and everything when the sun's shining? There's no downside to that, surely, is there?
Oh, there is, because obviously I've got a young family, and spending a lot of time away from them is difficult, which makes the time at home even more important, to be honest with you, Alan.
How young?
7 and 5.
Right, at ages where you've got kids of school age, haven't you?
13 and 10, mine, yeah.
13 and 10. In fact, you've come from a parents' evening tonight, haven't you?
I have, yeah, straight here, yeah. So,
so there
she's
are
done well.
There are certain demands. One thing in common, this guy Morgs here, he picked up his fair share of injuries over the years. He used to dish them out as well on occasions, but he took it. He took the stick as a rough and tumble centre half. You did as a player. But now, as an umpire, you are, because my eyes were watering just reading this report. I don't know if anybody saw it last week. Richard, umpiring abroad, you were there, weren't you? You was in Australia, a one-day international, and you got clouted on the shin, yeah, by a ball?
Yeah, it's the first time in my career that I've had to leave the field, either as a player or as an official through injury, but yeah, look, the game, players are getting fitter, players are getting a lot stronger than they ever were now. The bats they're using are far better than any stage in history. And Aaron Finch, who obviously opens the batting for Australia, played for Yorkshire for the last couple of years. smashed one back and I just couldn't get out of the way.
So it's a straight drive. Did it deflect off
The bowler got a little deflection on it, and then it just smashed me straight on the shin, and I had to spend 24 hours in a hospital in Canberra, which...
Just what did that feel like? Well, it's always a split second later, isn't it? That must have been a sickening...
Yeah, it was. I knew straight away I was in a bit of trouble, to be honest with you, but I stayed on the field for an hour or so, and it just got worse and worse. And the doctor, the Aussie doctor, who was actually the doctor who dealt with the Philip Hughes situation last year, he advised me I had to come straight off, and within an hour I was actually in a hospital bed, potentially looking at surgery. But thankfully that wasn't the case, and I was allowed to do the next game and come home.
Thankfully recovered. Were you wincing hearing that? Because it's surprising, doesn't that more often, really?
Yeah, there was. Am I right in saying a couple of weeks ago there was a player as well? It sort of deflected off his face and it hit the stumps to get somebody out. But I think that looked as though it had hurt a little bit as well.
Closey used to turn around and say, "Catch it," didn't he? When he got hit on the head anywhere, when he got hit anywhere.
Yeah, well, Closey's line was because he used to come into the dressing room when we were young kids at Yorkshire, and he always used to say that it's never on you long enough to hurt. Which, I mean, it's just... I can vouch that it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, I used to watch this guy play football a lot, and I used to cringe in the stand at some of his tackles.
Yeah. Well, so do we all. We're coming to the business end of the programme now. We will go far more into cricket and Yorkshire's resurgence, your job as a test match umpire as the programme goes on. But I was delighted when I heard that Richard was an Owls fan. Really, really delighted, because we've got a balance now. We've got a balance. A sort of balance that you're not finding, Morgs, at your place of work these days, are you?
No. I think it goes without saying that obviously at Chesterfield there's quite a big Sheffield Wednesday connection. Obviously the chairman, Dave Allen, the chief exec, Chris Turner, obviously the manager, Danny Wilson, Richie Humphries, ex-player.
Yeah.
And after the Shrewsbury game...
And Ashley Carson.
Ashley Carson, one of the directors. And then in the first home game that I had, David Hurst came down and popped his head in the office as well. So I think Nick, our media guy, took great pleasure in parking me in the middle and taking a picture. One blade surrounded by all the owls. But,
knowing you took them all on.
Yeah, well, Hursty proved to be a bit of a problem, but yeah, it was all good, and it's actually the first time in my career as well that I've had a blue and white sort of not playing kit, but certainly tracksuit, t-shirts. I've always been obviously red and white, so that's been a strange change and one that made both my daughters quite giggle a little bit. I think they quite like that first morning when I put my blue and white tracksuit on.
Getting used to it?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, it was obviously a big change. 12 and a half years is a long time. And I sort of joked the first couple of mornings that the car went into autopilot. It was dragging me towards Shirecliff. But no, it's been a good change. I think it was certainly an opportunity for me that that I couldn't turn down. To go, to go and work with Danny again. Not just a manager, but a man who I have a great deal of respect for and has done really, really good for me throughout my career. Set me off on my playing career, set me off on my coaching career. So when Danny asked me to go to Chesterfield as his assistant manager, it was a chance that I didn't want to turn down. It was tough. Somebody once said they said to me, was it an easy decision? It was an easy decision, but a real hard decision at the same time. And it was an easy decision to say yes, to go and work for Chesterfield, to get back in first team football, like I just said, to work with Danny, but also hard to leave Sheffield United, a club that I spent 12 and a half real good years there. Obviously there's ups and downs because that's football. It's never plain sailing, but it's a club that still now and always will means a lot to me.
Career progression at the end of the day. And you had a dream start too, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Danny had the first game against Coventry. They drew 1-1, and then the game against Shrewsbury at the Pro Act 7-1. I think both of us were stood there thinking, just save a few goals. We're going to need a few of these further down the line.
It's all downhill from here, kind of.
Well, yeah. That went to Rochdale, won 3-2. We were 3-1 up. Had 2 goals disallowed as well. So I think certainly the attacking side of the team. There's some real good players there. But obviously when you're towards the bottom of the league, things sort of do seem to go against you. And having played really well against Millwall last week, we ended up losing the game 2-1, and it was a game that we didn't even look like losing. But sort of 2 quick goals, one before half time, one after half time, and we found it hard to get back in. But the 2 defeats that we've had against Wigan and Millwall, 2 teams in the top 6, 2 good teams, and them 2 games were tough. But all games are going to be tough. You can play against teams at the bottom and it'll be tough. But I think we're reasonably happy with the games that we've had. So just looking forward to the next one.
You're losing a good player today, of course, Sam Morsey. We'll come to that in a moment. I'm sure that Danny Wilson's got plans, and people he'd like to bring in. There's a bit of a hue and cry about that today, so I will ask you about it. But you do have something in common, first of all. Richard, your uncle was a Blades player and a Chesterfield player, Keith Kettleborough. I remember him. Yeah, he was a good player too.
I've heard that. I actually never saw him play.
Oh, he was a good player.
But a lot of people have said he was a very good player. Not shy of leaving his foot in now and again.
He was gritty, but he was also an extremely good ball player and a player of long balls out to either side. He could spray it. Yeah. He was a really good player. I think he played for Doncaster, Sheffield United and Chesterfield. Yeah. Pity you didn't see him.
I think he went on to Newcastle after that. But
I think he did.
But when I was a young lad, my dad and my granddad used to take me to Hillsborough in the early 80s, sort of just when the Howard Wilkinson era started. So I got hooked. You do, don't you? You go and watch your team. My little lad comes with me now. He's only 5. Absolutely loves it. He's Forestier is obviously his favourite player, and he's mine at the moment as well. But no, I used to go there. I remember going with my dad in, I think it was 85, when Manchester United came to Hillsborough. They'd got on about 12 or 15 game unbeaten run at the start of the season, and Lee Chapman banged one in with 10 minutes to go. And those memories, they stick with you forever. And now I've been hooked. I actually love going down to Hillsborough on a Saturday. I go with a friend of mine who really enjoy go there, take my young lad. And it's actually nice to meet up with some old friends again, watch the team who you support, and it's actually just getting away from the cricket limelight, getting away from the pressure of international cricket, and just.
Well, everybody who goes to Hillsborough this season is enjoying it. Apart from opposition fans, that is, really.
Look, I think Stuart Gray did a wonderful job last year with his hands tied. I think he did really well, and obviously
Chris is nodding at that.
Yeah, I think he was very unlucky to lose his job. Really, he did a very good job with very little funds. But obviously the new chairman comes in. He's got his own ideas, which he's entitled to. And I mean, Carlos has come in and done so far a wonderful job.
Be honest, when he was appointed, Carlos Carvalho, and we were all looking him up, what did you think?
Well, I mean, your initial reaction is, who's this guy? Never heard of him. I mean, a lot of the talk was Sam Allardyce and other people, but no, he was appointed. I mean, it took him a while, I think, to get going, but they basically built a whole new squad. So it's obviously, Chris will tell you more than me, it takes a while for a squad to gel.
I'm surprised how quickly it has gelled. There was, an even start, not the best of starts, but it's come together, and there's a great team spirit down there. Perhaps you haven't seen a lot of Wednesday, but Danny could tell you, because he played for them and managed them, of course, as you know. So,
yeah, I see and speak to Lee Bullen quite often, and from a coach's point of view, the first thing I asked Lee was, how was he finding it, working with a foreign coach, and he said it had been excellent, and I think it helps that they've signed good players as well. They've signed some real quality players, and I think, you could possibly argue that the last year the structure that Stuart gave them, I think there was a lot of clean sheets. I think a lot of the Sheffield Wednesday supporters were thinking that they weren't scoring a lot of goals, drawing 0-0, winning 1-0, losing 1-0. But I think possibly the structure that Stuart gave them, the players have still got that. The players that are still there. And I think if you've got that structure and you add good players to it, then you get results.
And Carlos was wise enough not to disband that. He wanted to keep that core, that solid core to the team of the English players.
Yeah, and I think that's why it was important as well in keeping Lee.
Yeah,
I think somebody that knows the club, somebody that knows the ethos and the philosophy of the club, and keeping Lee in there, knowing the players, I I think it's probably been a good term for him as well.
Yeah, obviously it's been a difficult season so far for Sheffield United. We'll perhaps chat about that in the later in the programme, maybe even the second half. But I did mention Sam Morsey. Sense of the inevitable about him going today. There's always a disappointment though. I mean, I'm a Chesterfield supporter. I'm disappointed to see a very good player go. Nobody in their right mind wouldn't be, would they?
No, Sammy's a good player. You know, I think you look back over the past few seasons, and certainly last season, you know, with the playoff run, and you know, me at the time working for Sheffield United, when I'd gone to watch Chesterfield, and you go and do match reports, and you look at other teams. Certainly, him and Jimmy Ryan in the middle of the park were you know, two real big driving forces for him. And you know, since I've been in at Chesterfield, he is one of the better players, and that's why, you know, that's why people come. That's why people want the better players. You know, and it's difficult from our point of view that Sammy, unfortunately, at the end of the season is out of contract. You know, and if there's interest for Sammy, and you know, he can go and progress his career, then it's difficult to keep players. You know, it's difficult to you know, to try and talk him out of it. So obviously Sammy sees it as a progression for his career. But you know, certainly we'll be losing a good player. But you know, we have, and we'd be silly not to have lists and backups. You know, so it's I think it's important that we do replace Sammy.
It was pretty inevitable he was going, so that allowed you for the whole month and maybe earlier to plan for it and to prepare those lists that you're talking about. So how would you be looking at 1, 2, 3 players possibly?
Well, I think when you look at it, you know, I think first and foremost there'll be lads already in the squad that'll probably stick their hand up and say, I can take his place. So I think that's what we've got to do as a staff. But I think you know, obviously you lose one, and while ever the windows open, I think you've certainly got to use the time, you know, to strengthen. You know, we're towards the bottom of the league. We still need results, and the last thing we want to be doing is weakening. You know, so we'll give the lads chances that are already there. You know, your Ollie Bankses, your Chris Hurds, etc. You know, it's up to them now, you know, to come to the forefront and say, right, you know, I can replace Sammy Morsey.
There's always a hue and cry, and there has been today, when a football club loses a good player. Even though it's been inevitable and everybody's known for a long time. As I understand it, there was only one serious bidder at the end of the day. So Chesterfield couldn't do anything about that, and they've accepted whatever was on the table. It's undisclosed. I think it's around £200,000. But, you know, you could get nothing in the end, couldn't you, if you hold on to him? Some are saying, well, why not hold on to him? Because he could be the difference between staying up and going down.
Yeah, it could be. But I think you've also, you know, you've got to look from the player's point of view, a player that's been a good servant to the football club. And if it's a progression for him, yeah, we all want to be selfish. We all want to keep our best players. But if it's a progression for him, and you know, let's not you know, lose sight of it. That you know, if there is a substantial, you know, that type of amount of money on the table, and you're going to risk losing a player for nothing in the summer, and he's made it clear that, you know, he wants to pursue that, and he wants to move on, then you know, at times it's daft trying to keep him.
It's the story of the game, unfortunately, virtually everywhere you look. And there's not a lot of money in it, actually, outside of the elite, actually, Richard. More money in cricket than in some football clubs, you know. But cricket's had, we're going to talk more with Chris in the second half of the programme. Cricket's had this resurgence, really, of interest in the national team, but it's not on terrestrial TV. And we were all surprised that, say, Joe Root wasn't a nomination for BBC Sports Personality, were you?
I was very surprised. Probably Alistair Cook as well, to be honest with you, because the two of them have had fantastic years. Yes, I agree that cricket probably should be on terrestrial TV, and if you go to Australia now, you look at the Big Bash thing, it's on their terrestrial TV. They get massive audiences at the ground, massive TV audiences, and it's really, cricket over there is thriving, and maybe something that we probably need to look at.
Right, we'll look at that more in the second half of the programme. Talk Sheffield United, talk Sheffield Wednesday, talk Yorkshire, talk Test match cricket, talk umpiring. No James Gregg tonight. I'm going to have to do a poor impression. I've got a few mentions of local sport to come. Worksop Town, would you believe, even get a mention, even though they're slightly outside the border. Just a one-off mention this week because they had a fantastic, very notable victory. Join us again in 5 minutes. We'll see you then.